Week 4 of Super Rugby is just around the corner. I'm joined in studio by our Sport 24 editor Garen and chief writer Rob. Guys, I want to know what your predictions are for this weekend. Let's start off with the first match.
Hi Jen. First match of week 4 is the Cheetahs against the Reds in Brisbane. The Cheetahs coming off a bit of a hiding last week against the Rebels, so they'll be looking to bounce back. Unfortunately for them, the Reds are a pretty formidable outfit at home, even though they lost last weekend themselves. I expect them to probably be a bit too strong for the Cheetahs. Last year, fans will remember the Cheetahs lost their first game and they went on to win their remaining 3 games on tour. I don't see that happening this year. The Cheetahs team just doesn't look nearly as good as last year's team. I see them going down by as many as maybe even 10 points. I don't know if, Rob, I don't know if you think as many as that or perhaps even more. But yeah, Nakadrotsky's team I expect to lose on Friday.
Oh no, Rob, what do you think?
I'm with Garen on that one, Jen. I've got to say that I think the Cheetahs had their golden chance to get some tour momentum against the Rebels and blew it quite spectacularly. So the Reds in Brisbane, South African teams generally don't do well in Brisbane, whether it's test teams or Super Rugby teams, whatever. It just seems to be a bit of a bogey destination for South African sides. There's a little bit of a psychological thing about going to Brisbane. So not looking good for the Cheetahs. Of course, Kuni Oosthuizen Garen has come home. Again, a neck injury, so they've lost their big sort of brawn and ballast, if you like, in the front row, which is not good for them either. So it's difficult to look beyond Reds for that one.
All right, so those are your predictions for the first match. What about second?
Second match is for Stormers fans, their big game against the 7-time champion Crusaders in Christchurch. That game kicks off at 8:35 on Saturday morning. The Crusaders, they've lost their first 2 games. They're actually at the bottom of the log, so things not looking too good for them at the moment. But I expect them to bounce back. The Crusaders at home, again, a formidable side. Not many South African teams go there to Christchurch and walk away winners. They've made a couple of changes. They've lost Richie McCaw, the All Black skipper, with a thumb injury. He's out for, I think, 2 months. They've made some backline changes. But I still think they'll be too streetwise, if you like, up front for the Stormers, who themselves were fairly fortunate winners last week against the Hurricanes, having lost to the Lions the weekend before that. I think the Stormers will do better. I think they'll be happy to be away from the Cape Town South African media in Christchurch. But I think they're going to go down. I think in the region of 5 to 7 points, somewhere around there. But it could be a few more than that.
Rob, do you agree?
Yes, it'll be quite a momentous result if the Stormers do manage to win it. We were battling to remember when last the South African team had actually won in Christchurch, and we were thinking even, you had to sort of go pull the archive back to sort of not even Super 14, but Super 12 or Super 10 days to find anything resembling a South African success in Christchurch. So another place where South African teams don't play well. And the Stormers just don't seem to have enough quality on paper at the moment to be able to cause that upset. I still think the Crusaders team looks pretty formidable on paper. I think Wyatt Crockett's back in the mix, Garen, which obviously, a lot of hardened experience in the front row. Matt Todd fits in pretty seamlessly in Richie McCaw's place. So they really will be hell-bent on getting that first win, because if they go 0 from 3, the Crusaders, they're in a bit of trouble, aren't they?
Especially in that New Zealand conference, which is so strong.
All right, that's match 2 now. Predictions for match 3.
Match 3 is the Loftus match between the Bulls and the Blues from New Zealand. The Bulls, they won last week, but in not fantastic fashion, if you like. The Blues, they were really, really impressive in beating the Crusaders. They arrive with an all black front row, so tons of experience there. They've actually got a pretty formidable pack. The Bulls pack, which in the past has been pretty impressive, hasn't looked nearly as good this season. I think it's going to be the match that we disagree, Rob and I. I'm leaning towards the Blues simply because of their backline and the experience the flair that they possess in the backline, able to score tries from anywhere on the field. The Bulls just don't look that cohesive to me at the moment. I know rain's been expected, which might play into the hands of the Bulls, but I think at the end of the day it's going to be a Blues victory, but only by a couple of points.
Rob, do you disagree?
I do. I very nearly went.
Oh, I like when Rob disagrees with you.
It's one of those sort of ding-dong situations. You really can't decide which way to go. And eventually I took the sort of the old obvious sort of hometown thing. If you're going to look for a slight influencer in a tight game, maybe go for hometown advantage. The fact that the Bulls have got a win below their belts and the home faithful should get behind them in quite a big way if they do dare to turn out in the really grim Highveld weather that they're having at the moment. There's been flooding and all sorts of things. So I think the pitch is going to be pretty heavy. Regardless of whether it actually rains in the contests or not. It would be nice if things were a little bit dry, because we've had so many wet South African matches that you'd like to see a bit of a spectacle. But as you were saying, the Bulls might like it if it's got to be sort of tight and attritional. And I just think that they might just get across the line.
All right, do you have anything to add?
No, we'll agree to disagree on that match. We'll see what happens come Saturday afternoon.
Okay, and this weekend there's a bonus game, a fourth game.
Fourth game is a South African derby down in Durban between the Sharks and the Lions. The Sharks had the weekend off last week, but they have won their first 2 matches. The Lions won their first 2 matches, but then lost their third game. I think the Sharks should be fairly comfortable winners. I know Rob and I will agree on this one at least. It's going to leave the Lions 2-2, and it's going to put the Sharks at 3-0 and comfortably at the top of the South African Conference. I think the Sharks will have way too much skill and power up front, especially for the Lions. The Lions have made a fairly interesting decision at fly-half. They've brought back Elton Jantjies for Marnus Boshoff, who moves to fullback. Boshoff has been phenomenal in his first 3 games. He was man of the match in the first 2, leading point scorer in the competition to date. But they've moved him curiously to fullback. Jantjies, the jury's always, I think, out on him and what he actually possesses and what he brings to the game. The Sharks by maybe 15 to 20 points. I think it'll be that comfortable for Jack White's team.
Do you agree, Rob?
I'm tempted. I perhaps think that the Lions might run it a little bit closer. They have been a pretty respectable side so far. You know, obviously 2 good wins beneath the belt, and then a hiccup that we all thought was going to come eventually. A little bit of a correction against the Bulls, but I thought their team spirit was still pretty much intact. They still looked a pretty credible side, and I think they'll give the Sharks a few things to think about. But when you look at that Sharks lineup on paper, you struggle to find real weaknesses. You struggle to find areas where the Lions can sort of outfox them or get behind their defence. It's very hard to see unless we have a quagmire in Durban. I mean, the weather up north generally has been pretty grim, and there is some talk of rain also at Kings Park. So that might thwart the Sharks' plans for a bonus point. But I tend to agree with Garen that they should win comfortably and perhaps get the 4-try bonus point.
All right, well, some interesting predictions. Any players we should look out for this weekend?
For me, as I just mentioned, I'm going to look out for Elton Jantjies, see how he does perform. If he's a bit of a slow starter, having not played for some time now, I can see the Lions dropping him immediately, going back to Marnus Boshoff, who I think should probably have started anyhow. I think he's warranted another chance at the fly-half position. So he's the player I'm going to be looking out for this weekend.
Rob?
I'm also thinking in terms of fly-halves, funnily enough, obviously a very influential position anyway. But in the Cheetahs game, I think a good chance for young Johan Goosen, who's had a few injuries, but he's back playing again. Wasn't at his absolute precise best last week in the Cheetahs' defeat. He actually fluffed a couple of goalable penalties, which he'll be trying to rectify against the Reds, because I think the Cheetahs need to take every opportunity they get. But he's up against Quade Cooper, so a fantastic test for Johan Goosen, up against an established Wallaby international. And we all know that Quade Cooper is a very elusive and slippery character, so I'm looking forward to that matchup.
All right, there's a lot of fun ways that our viewers can get involved and challenge your predictions. Why don't you tell me what those are?
The best way would be to visit the sport24.co.za website, sign up for our Super Rugby competition, challenge the experts. We were a little bit better in week 3 after being pretty hopeless in the first 2 rounds. But challenge us, see how we're doing, see how you do compared to us. Send us your pictures. If you're going to any of the matches this weekend, send us your pictures. We'll upload them in the gallery and send you the link straight afterwards. So yeah, that's definitely the best way to go.
Cool, well, we'll see you guys on Monday.
See you, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.